Well, my special guest, Gina Kellum, lives in Tennessee and is a real estate sales manager in the Nashville area. Gina had a type of GERD surgery called a Nissen Fundoplication in 2016, but actually had the surgery reversed not too long ago because it was causing her so many issues. Gina runs a fast growing Facebook group called the Nissen Fundoplication Takedown, a forum for people who are having problems with their surgery. And I'm delighted to have her with us today to share her story. Gina, welcome to GERD Talk.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
So, the way I actually found you, Gina, was when I was thinking about the surgery and I was searching for information on Google, and I just so happened to stumble upon a health forum. I think it was like Healing Well or something like that. And I saw your post about how the fundo was causing you problems, which really got my attention because everyone seemed to be saying that it was pretty effective, that they got it, they never had reflux again. So I found your group on Facebook, joined it, and was glad I did because there were like 100 people at the time that were having issues with the surgery as well, and that convinced me to stay the course and find alternative ways for treatment. And your group has grown to almost 500 people, and it looks like it's going to keep growing. Did you expect it to get that big?
I did not. When I started this group, I realized that I was trying to find a solution for the problems that I was experiencing with the Nissen, and I couldn't find anything on the internet or any support groups that talked about a reversal of the Nissen. And so I decided, once I had spoken with my doctor about doing the takedown, I decided I would start my own Facebook group to let other people know that there was a solution and that they could reverse the surgery because there was nothing out there on the internet that I could research. So I decided to start the takedown group, and it has grown and grown and grown. I wanted to get the word out to people that this surgery is not a solution to their acid reflux. There's a lot of people that it is helpful for, but I have found out through doing my Facebook that there are more people that have issues than there are people who, that this resolved their problems for. Most of the people that are on a Facebook support group, the reason why they're on there is not because they feel good. Most of those people you don't find. It's the ones that are searching and are so desperate to help with any kind of symptoms, and they've done all the research they can find, and their doctors aren't any help. So I decided to start this group so that people could tell their stories and not be judged or shun away because they were not advocating for this surgery.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm glad you started the group because there just seems to be such a stigma when it comes to acid reflux surgery, at least that I've seen on these forums. I mean, if you just start a discussion and you say, "Hey, this surgery may not be the best idea," there seems to be like a stigma, some sort of, I don't know, establishment kind of a deal where if you question surgery or anything, you're kind of called a heretic and stuff like this. But, the truth is, if you do some research, you actually find that many people, after they have this surgery, they could start having issues even years down the line.
They do. A lot of people, especially the ones that are on my Facebook group, some of these people have had a Nissen for years and have just they're fighting not only the acid reflux that have come back, but other illnesses as well that have resulted from the Nissen fundoplication itself that people don't discuss and they don't tell and they don't warn. And the doctors are the first ones to not give you the full impact of what this surgery actually does to your body. And I found that out firsthand with my first surgery.
And these stories that I hear on your forum are truly heartbreaking. I mean, so many people, they expect to get better after the surgery, but the truth is many of them come out so much worse, and some even describe their lives as a living hell because they're suffering so much. But let's start off with your story. Gina, could you tell us when you started to experience acid reflux, what that felt like, and kind of how that led you to surgery?
Well, I've suffered for years, and I've just, taken over-the-counter medicine. It started with just a burn in my chest, all the way back to my shoulder blade in my left side. So much so that I thought it was a heart attack. And most of the time I would go and my heart would check out. Everything was fine. It wasn't any issue. But that burning sensation and the pain, like I said, radiated all the way through my shoulder blade and down to my arm. And it just was miserable. And it didn't matter whether I ate or I didn't eat, I would have those symptoms. Later, I came to find out that I also had a hiatal hernia, which was causing a lot of my symptoms with the acid reflux too. So I guess it was probably in August of last year, 2016, I started meeting with my GI doctor, and they started running a bunch of tests to try to figure out what they could do, because the PPIs weren't working, the acid reflux medicines weren't working, and my diet that I had changed wasn't working either. And the pain was just getting so bad that my esophagus was starting to swell, and food, what would happen would be I would start vomiting anytime I would eat, because the hernia was in my esophagus. It was acting as though it was a trampoline. So as soon as I would eat something, it would come back up. And so then the acid reflux would get worse. So I went and met with a surgeon, and it was a general surgeon, and he told me about the Nissen Fundoplication. And he said, oh, it's a great surgery. You're going to have great results. It didn't sound like it was a big deal. He said, we're going to take your stomach and wrap it 360 degrees around your esophagus, and then we'll sew the top part of it together. Not only will that keep the acid reflux down, but it'll also take care of the hiatal hernia that you have. So being like probably 99% of most people in the world, you trust what a doctor tells you. And so in the October of 2016, I went in for surgery for my first Nissen Fundoplication. When I woke up from surgery, I was extremely sick, vomiting from the anesthesia and from what had been done to my body, obviously, and stayed in the hospital for probably about 3 to 4 days, and then they released me to go home. Although I was still in excruciating pain, I figured it was just from the surgery itself, and not knowing, what type of symptoms I should be, having from the surgery. I was desperate and started looking on Facebook and the internet, trying to find groups of people who had had the Nissen surgery to see if my symptoms were normal for being that early out of surgery. And a lot of people had agreed, yes, it takes a long time to heal from the surgery. So I chalked it up to, okay, this is just part of the recovery. So for about 8 weeks, the first 8 weeks, I was miserable. The pain was so intense, it just brought me to my knees. I could not eat. I could only drink water and chicken broth, and lost probably 40 pounds in that first 8 weeks. And again, the pain was like none other. I just had never experienced it before in my life. So it was on December 22nd, I went and saw my surgeon of 2016, and could barely walk into his waiting room and lay down on the chairs while I waited for an hour in his waiting room. And he said, okay, your symptoms aren't really normal. We need to send you down for a scan. So they sent me down for a scan, and come to find out, my wrap had broke sometime in between from when I had the surgery and in that first 8 weeks, and my stomach was in my chest cavity near my heart. and they ended up having to do emergency surgery. This time I saw a thoracic surgeon since it had to do with my heart and the upper part of my chest. So the thoracic surgeon went in and did emergency surgery, removed my stomach from my chest, and redid the wrap. Stayed another 3 or 4 days in the hospital, and then I went home. From there, things progressively got worse. Still in excruciating pain, what they call gastric dumping, constantly going to the bathroom, still not eating, rapidly losing weight, deteriorating. I mean, my health was deteriorating. I was slowly dying. So in January, I went back to the surgeon, and he said, okay, let's put you back in the hospital. Let's do what we call a dilation. So they put me back under anesthesia, and they put a balloon down my throat and into my esophagus and into my stomach to try to stretch the wrap, thinking that maybe the wrap was too tight. So I stayed another couple of days in the hospital, still not able to eat, excruciating pain. They released me from the hospital. I came back home, spent another 6 weeks, pretty much miserable, couldn't sleep, I couldn't walk, I could barely talk. The pain was so just intense, and pretty much on the floor all day, every day, trying to find a position where I could relieve this pain from the surgery. And there was nothing I could do. I mean, there was no amount of pain medicine. There was no amount of antacid. The reflux was back. There was no amount of anything that was working. The ambulance was coming at least, weekly to my house to come get me because I was in so much pain that my family could not get me to a hospital. So I finally, after spending a week in the hospital, in the end of February, the doctor said, the only thing that I can do for you, Gina, is a takedown. And I said, well, what does that mean? And he said, where we just totally reversed the surgery. He said, I removed the hernia sac, which doctors don't tell you that they can remove a hernia sac. The surgery, you don't have to have a Nissen Fundoplication to get rid of your hernia. They can actually remove the hernia sac, but I was not aware of this because my first surgeon didn't disclose that to me. I thought this was my only option for the acid reflux and the hernia. So the surgeon explained to me we can do a takedown, which involves us removing your stomach from around your esophagus and placing your stomach back where it belongs. And everything should settle back down, and hopefully that will relieve your symptoms. So basically I had 4 surgeries in about a 4 to 5 month span of time because of doing the Nissen Fundoplication. So in March of this year, 2017, they did the takedown. Immediately when I woke up, I felt better. It was that pain that I had been experiencing for all those months. Mm-hmm. It's gone.
Wow. Immediately.
Immediately, as soon as I woke up. And I was like, I could breathe again. I could take deep breaths and things of that nature. Over the last couple of months, I started trying to reintroduce foods. It's like almost being on a fast for, like a year. And so your body's not accustomed to foods when all you've done is just put liquids in your body. I mean, I couldn't even drink protein shakes at the time. So like I said, I was slowly deteriorating and dying from the Nissen Fundoplication. So I was grateful for the takedown. Luckily, my doctor had been transferred here from California and was a surgeon out in California, and that's how he knew about the takedown. And he had expressed that he has been trying to teach the doctors here in our part that a Nissen Fundoplication is not necessary to stop doing these surgeries because of the results from these. That it's far worse on a person's body than the acid.
So that's a very interesting point you bring up, Gina, because if you take a look at the medical studies today out there, most of the medical literature is going to say that the Nissen Fundoplication is the best surgery. Some call it the golden standard, and many surgeons actually prefer that and recommend that over the newer surgeries such as the Lynx method and the Muse. But you're saying that what this doctor was actually seeing in reality when he was doing the surgery is that the Nissen Fundoplication wasn't working for his patients.
Exactly. Yes. And so he said, had I seen you first, I would have never have suggested this surgery to you at all. And I realize there's a lot of people that it has saved their life. It prevented them from getting, esophageal cancer and things to that nature. There are some people that this surgery is necessary for some people, but the majority of the doctors are doing it way too much, and everybody's body is different in how they respond to the surgery, because you're taking something that where God has put it and you're rearranging it completely. And it's just not meant to be that way. And a lot of people, their bodies reject the surgery, and that's what was happening to me.
And, a lot of our listeners, Gina, may not know what a Nissen fundoplication is, but basically a Nissen fundoplication is when you take the upper part of the stomach and you wrap it around the lower esophageal, or the lower esophagus, I should say, right near where the lower esophageal sphincter is. That's where your stomach and your esophagus meet. And the idea is if you wrap something tight, the top of your stomach, around, and you sew that top of the stomach, it's called the fundus, to your stomach, it will actually tighten the lower esophagus so that acid won't be able to come back up. Well, the problem with that surgery is, well, first off, it's really serious. And for you to get an idea of this, if you're new to this and you just want to learn more about surgery and you just have questions, go to my website at gerdwise.com, click on Knowledge Hub, just hover your mouse over that and click on surgery. Just go down to surgery. And I have a YouTube video that shows you exactly what a surgeon does, and it's a really bloody job. They actually, basically, your esophagus is surrounded by all this connective tissue, and they have to cut through all of that using this special type of, it's like a scissor that actually burns the tissue and cuts it at the same time. But they actually have to get rid of all that into a bloody mass and make a hole behind the tissue, behind the esophagus. And so what they do is they take the upper part of the stomach and pass it behind the esophagus and then over, and then they stitch it up. I want to go back to the symptoms you were experiencing, Gina, when you were saying you first had the surgery. You said you were still getting acid reflux even after the surgery, and you were experiencing pain. Can you tell our audience where you were experiencing pain? Was it in your stomach? And was there any sort of explanation the doctors gave you for why you were still experiencing acid reflux even after they tightened your esophagus?
Well, the pain that I was experiencing was, again, that it was all in my chest. I never felt my stomach. I could feel that my stomach had been moved. But it was in between my chest, and it would penetrate straight back through to my shoulder blades, and it was a burning, squeezing pain, as though someone had tied a rubber band around my stomach and my esophagus, and there was no relief. If you tie a rubber band around your finger and the circulation starts to cut off, and you feel that throbbing and that sharp pain in your finger, that's what it felt like inside. And it was just so much tightening inside that I couldn't breathe. I couldn't lay down. I couldn't stand up. There wasn't anything that would relieve that pain. And it wasn't something that would come and go. It was constant, as though I wasn't getting circulation throughout my esophagus or my stomach. And especially if I tried to swallow or eat, your stomach automatically tries to expand whenever and contract whenever you eat or drink something. And it was like it was trying to do that, but it couldn't. It was trapped. So therefore, air was trapped in me. And then that would make my acid reflux even worse. I would get the burning feeling in my chest and my shoulder blade, my arm. So it was intense. It was worse than the acid reflux itself before I even had the surgery.
And were you getting any sort of symptoms of regurgitation, heartburn after the surgery, or was it just the pain?
It was yes, both.
It was both. Okay.
Both.
Could you describe what that felt like, the acid reflux?
It was the tightening of my chest, the pain straight through, the burning sensation all the way to my left shoulder blade, and just the burning in my esophagus. When they do this Nissen Fundoplication, you get very bloated and you can't belch. No air can go out. Everything goes in, but nothing comes out. So you've got all of this air that's trapped in you, and usually when you have acid reflux, a lot of people they'll belch to help relieve some of the symptoms. With the Nissen Fundoplication, you're unable to do that. So everything stays trapped inside of you. So there's a buildup of pressure, which you pretty much I felt like I was going to explode from the inside out.
When you were getting the acid reflux, did you feel any regurgitation? In other words, did you, because some people have this, they feel, even if it's just a gulp of water, they feel the water actually come up from their stomach, go into their chest and up their throat. Did you ever taste any sort of reflux or anything like that?
I did not taste any reflux, but it was though everything was stuck and it couldn't get to my stomach, that it was stuck in between my breastbone, in my chest. It felt like a big lump. Anytime I would swallow, it was like there was a lump right there and nothing would go down.
Got it. And the reason why I bring up heartburn and regurgitation is because some of the studies I've been looking at say that there's a lot of evidence out there that LPR is being overdiagnosed, or GERD. And it turns out that if people don't have the symptoms of heartburn, right, that burning feeling you get in your chest associated with hiccups and maybe indigestion, and also regurgitation, which is when you actually feel something come up from your throat and taste something in your mouth, those two things, if you have those two things, doctors can say, yes, you do have GERD. But beyond that, PPIs and all sorts of treatment methods have been notoriously horrible at treating anything beyond heartburn and regurgitation. So I was just wondering if that was something you're experiencing. I want to ask you about this whole idea that when you have acid reflux that is untreatable with PPIs, conventional therapy, that surgery is the next thing that's offered to you, right? And most doctors, I don't doubt for a second, are in it to help the patients, but it seems like there's only two options here in terms of the truth about acid reflux surgery. Number one, they don't know, okay? They genuinely think that this acid reflux surgery is going to make their patients better. Or number two, they know, but they're not telling us the true symptoms. In your experience, just from running this group, do most of the doctors for your members know about the bad symptoms, the horrible suffering that may come with the surgery, and do they actually warn their patients about it?
From my experience, I truly feel that these doctors know what they're doing, but they're surgeons. So all they're concerned about is doing the surgery, and then afterwards, they're done with you. So if your symptoms get worse or you have any other symptoms, you have to revert back to a GI doctor. They're done. Once they've done the surgery, they're done. So they know that there's problems with this surgery. And my second surgeon who did this, he said, I've been trying to get these doctors to realize that the success rate is not what they think it is. He said, I go in all the time and fix people's messes from this surgery, was what he had told me. And I said, well, why did the doctor not tell me this? And he said, because they're still believing that the Nissen Fundoplication is the answer to the problems, that the rest of the problems can be resolved later on, that it takes time to heal and things like that. And he said, but the vast majority of the people who have problems end up with more symptoms than what they came in with. And that was the same for me. And during one of my 4 surgeries, they ended up damaging my vagus nerve. So now I suffer from what's called gastroparesis, which means a paralyzed stomach. So, I went into this thinking that, okay, I'm going to get the acid reflux fixed and my hernia is going to be fixed. I'm going to come out of this on the other side better. But I'm not, and I suffer every single day. And there's a lot of people on my website that also have suffered from gastroparesis from the surgery, because the vagus nerve is one of the longest running nerves in your body, and it has to do with the motility. Also in your stomach, it has to do with your brain. There's a lot of things that the vagus nerve is connected to. And it just so happened, since they were doing surgery on my stomach, was when they damaged my vagus nerve around my stomach. So again, like I said, I suffer from a paralyzed stomach, which means that my stomach empties slowly. A normal person's might empty within an hour and a half to 2 hours after they eat a meal, where mine takes between 6 to 10 hours to digest anything. So because I had the surgery, I now suffer from an illness that there is absolutely no cure for. And there's nothing they can do for me. Absolutely nothing. So that's one reason why I started the Nissen Fundoplication group, was because I wanted to get the word out that, please make sure you do your research on this surgery and don't trust the surgeon blindly. I made that mistake, and now I'll have to live the rest of my life with that.
Yeah.
And I wanted people to have a safe group that they could come to and realize, like I said in the beginning, there was nothing really out there on the Nissen Fundoplication takedown. That I didn't know that was even an option. Had it not been from this doctor from California, I would have never have known. And I don't know that I would even be here today able to talk to you, because my health was declining so rapidly.
Yeah. I mean, that's just unconscionable. So let's just get this straight. You're saying that this first surgeon didn't even tell you that there were side effects to the surgery. He didn't tell you that the surgery has a good chance of not working, and it includes side effects like nausea, bloating, and inability to vomit or burp, and that there could be nerve damage. He didn't tell you any of this?
No. He told me nothing. I knew nothing. He said that I was going to be better. It was going to take time to heal, but that once my body adjusted to it, that I was going to be great. He never once told me about the consequences to the surgery. Never once told me that there could be damage to my vagus nerve. He never once led me to believe that this was a very serious surgery. I mean, I knew that every surgery is serious, but I've had many surgeries prior to this. So I thought, well, okay, it's going to be like normal. There's going to be a healing time and things like that. But I want the listeners to realize, if it's your last option, I totally understand and I get it, and you have to do what's best for yourself. But make sure you research it. Make sure you know the side effects, the consequences, because it is life-changing when you have this surgery, and not always for the best.
That's right. Friends, I second that with Gina. Please, please, please ask your doctor questions. Ask Ask him or her how effective the surgery is, what their experience level is. That's very important as well. How skilled the doctor is in doing the surgery, because not all surgeons are the same. Not all surgeons are skilled. Okay, and do your research. Join health forums if you need to. Get a second, third, fourth, even a fifth opinion from different doctors to see if you really need the surgery. And I know this might be hard for some of you because you've been dealing with acid reflux for so many years. You're suffering, you're in pain, maybe you have trouble sleeping, maybe you're losing weight, maybe you're gaining weight, and you're just constantly dealing with vocal loss, things like that. I would say to my friend, tough it out and try alternative treatments. See if your issue might be related to indigestion, and really make surgery your last ditch option here. Gina, I just find it so hard to believe that your doctor did not tell you about these side effects. I mean, you really want to give the benefit of the doubt to doctors, especially because they took the Hippocratic oath to do good to their patients. But you have to wonder, it's impossible for a surgeon who does the fundoplication to not know of the effectiveness of it. Your doctor had to know that not all people who go through this procedure come out better. He had to have known that. He definitely knew there were side effects, and yet he did not tell you. I mean, that's what really just frustrates me the most, and I'm sure you are too. Why didn't he tell you? Maybe you didn't ask him questions, but I think that's just so ridiculous. If doctors took the Hippocratic oath and are there to heal the patient, are there to care for the patient, why in the world didn't he tell you about these side effects? I mean, that is just ridiculous. It makes you think that maybe it was because he wanted, let's just lay it out on the table. Maybe it was because of the money. Friends, this surgery costs thousands and thousands of dollars. And when you hear stories like this, you really begin questioning the system and sadly, the integrity of some doctors. And I'm by no means bashing doctors. Doctors, of course, are integral to our society. I respect doctors. But I would just say this. Think for yourself. Use critical thinking. Don't blindly trust the doctor, because ultimately, your health is in your own hands. Gina, I want to ask you if there's a particular diet you're on right now. You mentioned earlier when you were going to the surgery, you had a special diet that you were trying out. Is there something, if someone just had this procedure, had a fundo today, is there a sort of diet or foods you would recommend for them or to them?
The one thing that I learned is when you have this surgery, you become very malnourished because you're unable to eat and you're on liquid diets for weeks on end. My suggestion is get liquid minerals and vitamins. Take a liquid vitamin, a multivitamin. Take liquid ginger root, liquid licorice. That helps soothe your stomach. Ginger root is really helpful for your stomach in aiding and healing and things to that nature. But make sure that you're getting the nutrition that you need, because they don't explain to you that, because you're on a liquid diet and you're only eating chicken broth or bone broth or whatever, you are so malnourished and losing weight rapidly, and you become dehydrated very fast with this. So make sure you stay hydrated. Stay away from sugars. Anything that has sugar in it. Don't do Gatorade. Gatorade's the worst thing possible for you when you've had a Nissen Fundoplication because of all the sugar content in it. Stay away from anything that's a milk-based product. No milk, no dairy, anything like that. Go organic if you possibly can. There's an organic protein drink that doesn't have any soy or any GMO in it, and it's lactose free. Anything that's going to help aid and help soothe your stomach. Definitely nothing fried, or you can't eat, probably I would say for the first 8 to 10 to 12 weeks, you shouldn't really be eating any solid foods. You can try some mashed potatoes, something that's liquidy, that you're able to try to eat. But if you've had a Nissen Fundoplication and you think that it's worked for you and you're okay, but you're just dealing with the pain process, then just take it slow and don't try to fast pace your health when it comes to this. The healing process is very long. It is very, very long. And it can take up to a year to heal. But if you know and you feel something isn't right, get to a doctor. That is the first thing that you need to do. I waited thinking that it was a healing process, not knowing that my wrap had broke and that it was in my chest cavity near my heart. So, you just listen to your body. Rest. You're going to have to rest. You can't just have the surgery and 2 weeks later go back to work. It's not going to work. You can't. It just is impossible to do. And you're going to have to give your body the time to heal that it needs to. But get the nourishment that you need. And again, vitamins and minerals are so important during the whole healing process. And, again, my group has grown, tremendously, and my heart aches for every single person on my Nissen Fundoplication takedown page. I know what they're experiencing with the pain and the agony and from the surgery, and there's no relief, and they go to doctors and the doctors won't do the takedown. Not every doctor will do the takedown. And
now, is it because they don't know how to do the takedown, or just because it's too much of a liability?
I think it's probably a little of both. I think they are worried about vagus nerve damage, because once you do a Nissen Fundoplication, there is a lot of scar tissue that's involved in the healing process. So the longer you wait for a takedown, the more scar tissue there is.
Mm-hmm.
So,
And I just want to go back to something you mentioned about vagus nerve damage. In your experience, is that a common thing that happens?
I'm finding out more and more that it is very common, because it is such a small nerve and it is so close to your stomach and your esophagus. You're very lucky if you don't get vagus nerve damage in doing the surgery itself or doing the takedown. The takedown is a risk also, but it was a risk I was willing to take because I was slowly dying. And I knew that I had no other option at that time. I had to undo what had been done to me. So, I realized that a lot of people out there are saying, hey, look, I had the Nissen Fundoplication and I'm great. My life is 100%, I'm great. And I'm so thankful that worked for people. But there are so many of us out here that are crying and screaming and trying to get answers to help us, because we're so desperate. You had mentioned depression. The depression is severe with this surgery. It takes a toll on your family, takes a toll on your job, your money. Everything. It takes a toll on a person. So the depression is deep. The anxiety is high, and you're trying to find answers, and you're reaching out to anyone and everybody that'll listen to you. And that was part of the reason why I created this group. and why it's grown so much is people are looking for answers. And I had found that a lot of the support groups that I had joined would kick me off because I was telling the truth about the surgery itself. And they didn't want any negativity on their page. And it wasn't that I was being negative, it was that I was being truthful about the surgery and the results, because I want to bring awareness to this that I don't think people realize. And I know they don't. I've been researching this for over a year, and people just are not aware
Incredible.
of the consequences to the surgery.
And I actually remember the whole reason why you started this Facebook group was because they kicked you off of the original forum I found you on first.
Yes, correct. It was there's a couple of groups out there, and one of the admins had private messaged me and said that they didn't, that I was no longer welcome in the group because I wasn't a success story. And they
Incredible.
wanted success stories on their group. And so, of course, I was irate, and I said, but you're lying to people. You're not telling them the truth. They're not getting the whole story. It's not all unicorns and rainbows.
Right.
I realize that some people do have success, and I'm grateful for that. But there are thousands and hundreds of thousands of us out here that are suffering because we had the surgery blindly and didn't have all the information on hand given to us.
Right. That is just, I mean, I'm in shock. I mean, why would you suppress that information from people? I mean, unless you're getting paid by one of these companies to have the forum. It's the only reason I can think about.
Yeah.
That is incredible. You said earlier that your wrap actually broke. Can you explain what that means? What does it mean for a fundo to break?
Well, what most people call the Nissen Fundoplication is a wrap, because they take your stomach and wrap it around your esophagus, and then they use stitches to sew it together. So what happened was my stitches broke, and I truly believe it happened as soon as I woke up from the anesthesia and I was violently vomiting. I really, truly think that's when the wrap broke, but I don't have any proof. And they never scanned me before I even left the hospital the first time to make sure everything was intact. So, it could have happened then, or it could have been within the first 8 weeks. I just know that when I went to the doctor, and he sent me to the thoracic surgeon because it was life-threatening. So, but the wrap does come undone. The stitches can come apart. And how common it is, it happens, but it's not as common as most of the symptoms are from having the Nissen fundoplication. So, it can happen. It happened to me, and I know of several other people on my forum that it has happened to them, and then they've had to go back in and have their Nissen fundoplication redone. And sometimes it happens years down the road. Someone gets the flu and they're violently sick, and I guess it just rips open, and they end up with their stomach in their chest cavity, or they end up with worse problems again. And so, I mean, it can happen. It is something that's part of a complication of having a Nissen fundoplication that people need to be aware of.
And Gina, if someone just had a Nissen fundoplication and is really going through a hard time and wants to find out more information on how to reverse it, where can they go? Do you have any places you would recommend?
The best place, and I'll tell you, I've only known on my forum of 3 people besides myself, so that makes 4, that have had the takedown surgery. Out of the 500 plus that are on my takedown page, there's only 4 of us. One lady was in New York. Another gentleman, I believe he's in California. And there's another lady in Florida. and of course, myself here in Tennessee. But I'll be honest, when I was doing my search, I couldn't find doctors that did the takedown. And a thoracic surgeon is who I saw for my takedown. So I would say start with a thoracic surgeon. They're going to be probably the best deal to go through, as far as, because everything is so close to your chest at that point once they do the Nissen Fundoplication, that I truly think that you need a specialist and not just a general surgeon in this field, that you truly need to seek a specialist. And, most GI doctors they're not even aware of the takedown. I've gone, we have supposedly a great hospital in Vanderbilt here in Nashville, Tennessee. And, they don't do very many takedowns at all. So I was very fortunate that this doctor from California, the thoracic surgeon, knew about takedowns and had done several takedowns. But I would say start out seeking a thoracic surgeon, and then go from there and go for their recommendation on who you should see.
Got it. And where can our listeners find you if they're interested in joining your Facebook group to learn more?
They can just type in their search bar on Facebook, Nissen Fundoplication Takedown. And I'll get your request and I will add you on.
Perfect. Now, this isn't just for people who've had the surgery, but is it also for people who want to learn more?
Absolutely. Absolutely. My group is for anyone who is considering the surgery and wants more information, anyone that's had the surgery and is desperately trying to find a solution, or family members. I've got family members that are on there trying to seek help for a loved one that's suffering, and they're watching them suffer, and they're at wit's end and don't know what to do. There's a lot of great people on my forum that are just wonderful, and you truly need support when you are going through this and you've had this surgery. If it were not for the support group and the people being so great and so generous to me and reaching out to me, I've spoken to several of them on the phone, especially when I was considering the takedown. There was one lady who I knew had the takedown, and she was gracious enough to talk to me over the phone. And that's what solidified me doing my takedown, was talking to her and knowing that, there was hope for me after this surgery.
Yeah. Well, that is such an amazing, well, not amazing story, but such a powerful story. And I just want to thank you again, Gina, for coming on and joining me on the podcast and sharing your story. I know it's going to help a lot of people make a better informed decision about the surgery, and I hope you get better soon.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right. Well, friends, you heard the interview. This surgery is serious stuff. Please do the research and ask your surgeon or doctor plenty of questions. Get on YouTube, take a look at some of these videos of the surgery actually being done live to make sure you know what it is. Make sure your doctor actually explains all the side effects, all the adverse effects even that can come with the surgery. Don't go into this blind. Don't think that surgery will solve all your problems, because it might not.